I'm I'm off. I'm out of it, aren't I? Do I have to do something?
No, can you? We're all good. We're all good. Can you see me?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I see you behind a big square thing that says the host has enabled local recordings.
Oh yeah. Can you hit that?
I hit got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Now you
got
see
it.
me? Okay.
Yeah,
All
not big
right.
anymore.
All right. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our special live video here on Albert Einstein's social media. My name is Benjamin Cohen. I am the author of the new book, The Einstein Effect: How the World's Favorite Genius Got into Our Cars, Our Bathrooms, and Our Minds, all about the modern day relevance of Albert Einstein. And I am thrilled, so excited to be joined today by someone with 1 degree of separation from Albert Einstein, and that is Alicia Sacks from San Diego, California. Welcome, Alicia.
Hi, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So, for those people who don't know who Alicia is, I'm going to share a photograph on the screen. This is a photo from 1954. Of course, that's Albert Einstein. Uh, that's Albert Einstein. And over here, the tall girl in the back is the one and only Alicia Sacks, who is joining us today. So we have in our midst today royalty, Einstein royalty, somebody who not only met Albert Einstein but who spent a lot of time visiting Einstein. Her family was good friends with the Einsteins, and she would spend many weekends with her two younger sisters over
It,
here visiting the Einsteins in Princeton.
well, can I make one correction?
Yeah,
All right, my two younger sisters, this was the first time we went to see the professor, and this was
yeah.
the only time they ever went there.
Oh, really?
They didn't they didn't go my because the younger sister, the one that I have my hands around, she before we went to see him the day before, she was only 3.5 years old,
Uh-huh.
and she got a hold of my mother's red lipstick, and she wrote all over her face with the lipstick. And my mother says, "Oh my God, we're
This one.
going to see Professor Einstein for the first. We're going to meet him." And she has red all over her face, and she tried very hard not to make my sister Susie cry, but it was very hard. My sister was not happy being there, and the red is off her face, but she never wanted to go back. So it was
Uh-huh.
only me. So my father would take me, and my mother, I think she went a couple of times, but not very often. But my father would go very often, and he would take me.
So you were telling me for like a year and a half, from 1954 to 1955 to when Albert Einstein died in April 1955, you and your dad would go a couple times a month for a year and a half every Saturday and visit Albert Einstein. This is
You
mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. All right. Maybe not every Saturday, but we went, like
Yeah, every other
extremely
Saturday.
frequently. I mean, I
Yeah.
played in his yard. I ate lunch in his kitchen. Yeah, I got to know him and he answered my questions. He was like a grandfather. In fact, when he died, I was absolutely devastated because he
Uh-huh.
was closer to me than my grandfathers, who had also died in 1955, but
What
he was
was
closer.
what was he like to have a conversation with? Was he had a thick German accent, right? Was it easy to
Oh,
understand?
yeah. Oh, yeah. It wasn't that thick. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
was very, it was very soft and sweet.
Mhm.
And I've heard recordings of him, and that's not the voice he used. I mean, when he was speaking to me, he was a little different, but he was wonderful. I mean, and it wasn't. We didn't have conversations like somebody said, "Oh, did you talk about science?" No,
Right.
we did not talk about science.
Talked about lunch.
We talked about lunch
Yeah.
and
What
other
did you
things.
what did they serve at the Einsteins? Tuna fish, peanut butter?
No, we never had meat. And
Uh-huh.
I had asked my mother, because my mother did go a few times, but
Yeah.
maybe 4 times. Um, and and there were two women living with the professor. One was Miss Dukas. I don't know who the other woman was. I don't know her name. Do you?
I think
I
I
don't know
think
if it was a
the
sister or.
well, I know he had a sister there. I don't know if she was alive then. His secretary, Helen Dukas, maybe it was his stepdaughter, Margot? I think his
Maybe.
his stepdaughter Margot, I think, also lived at the
Well,
house.
she looked pretty old. I mean, well, I was 10 years old. If you were 35, you probably were pretty old. Uh,
Right,
but I
right,
think
right, right.
Margot, I'm gonna write that down because I think the other
Yeah,
person's name was Margot. But one of them was very nice and the
yeah.
other not so
Was
much.
not. Did you see? I know Einstein had a dog named Chico. Was he there when you were there?
No,
No.
no.
Okay, so let's take a step back. How did your
Okay.
dad become friends with Albert Einstein?
Okay. My father was an attorney. We lived in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. We lived in
Yeah.
Brooklyn on the fifth or sixth floor of an apartment house, and his office was in New York City. And he had clients. We didn't have a car or anything. And he had a client, and I sent you a picture of. No, that's the father of the client. So
Okay.
he had a client, and the client owed my father money, and the client said, "Would you forget my bill if I introduce you to Albert Einstein?" Well, that was no problem about that. So my
Yeah.
father said, sure. And he said, okay, so we're going to go up like next Saturday or next Sunday or whatever. And um, that's how we got to know the professor. And we went up with him, and that picture that you have,
I'll
that's
post it right
the
now.
father, the medical doctor. Did I say that?
Yeah.
The yes, the man on the right, the big guy. He was the medical doctor, and
Yeah.
and it was his son. I hope I'm
Who
getting
was
this right. I'm hoping that's
his
not
son
him. I
was a
don't think
client
it's
of
the
your
son.
yeah.
Yes, the son was
And
a
this is
client,
this
and
is
he
your
was
dad right here.
yes, and I'm thinking that that's the doctor, but it might have been the son. My father's
Okay.
client. I don't know. I really I don't know.
So your dad is
Uh,
right here in the white shirt on
yes,
the left side. And
yes.
so your dad came that one time, met Einstein, and they became friends?
Well, I think Einstein really, I call him the professor. So,
Okay.
um, so the professor really liked the kids. And we were running around in the yard, and he had a
Mhm.
huge yard. Well, we didn't have a yard in Brooklyn, and I
Yeah.
was 10, so maybe it wasn't that huge, but it seemed huge. And it had two trellises, and it was just had beautiful flowers, and it had lilies of the valley. I remember it was just they smelled so pretty, and they were in bloom. And we were running around, and my father started yelling at us, and the
Uh-huh.
professor got pretty upset about that.
He got upset that
And
your
he,
dad was yelling?
uh-huh. And
Uh-huh.
he said, they're kids. You have to let them run around. They're having fun. I mean, I remember that because my father was pretty strict about
Yeah.
stuff. And it felt really good that this nice gentleman who I just met would tell my father, leave him alone.
Yeah.
So that's my like first memory of the professor. And he really liked us. Um, and it got more complicated. I don't know if you want to ask more questions, but we spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't have a car. So my father had to ask people who had a car if they wouldn't mind driving up to Princeton
From
and
Brooklyn.
take in from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And there weren't that many people who had cars in those days, and
Yeah.
especially if they lived in Brooklyn. But anybody who had a car, my father would ask them, and they never said no.
Well, of course. I mean, Einstein
Not
was world
that's
famous.
he was
Yeah.
yes, he was a rock star. He was
Mhm.
absolutely a rock star. And that's how I got to and because my sisters didn't want to go up, and especially poor Susan, all
Yeah.
she could think about is how her face hurt uh,
Yeah.
from the lipstick. They didn't want to go up,
Yeah.
so my father took me, and
Right. Well,
so I
who
went.
would want to visit a professor, a scientist on a Saturday?
I mean, really.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
liked it because I loved the yard and I loved the professor. And I mean, not in the beginning, I didn't know him, but I got to know him, and I asked him some questions that were in the book from the library, which I have not finished yet. Your book. Um,
Mhm.
it in. it put some light on some of the questions I asked, which seem I know they've been written about in other things and people have spoken about this, but I didn't know the reason. And what I'm about to say is I asked him why he didn't wear socks because I
Yeah.
never saw a man who didn't wear socks in 1954 and 5. And he
Yeah.
said, "Don't tell." Now, I don't know if he said Margot or Miss Dukas, but he said one of
Yeah.
them. He said, "Don't tell Margot,
Yeah.
but I don't like the way they feel, so I don't wear them." And then she gets angry at me. And then I tell her, "Oh, I forgot." And then she leaves me alone, but don't tell her that. So that's what he told me about the socks.
Yeah. There's
And
a
I
I
remembered that.
Yeah, I read somewhere maybe that he had like some, bunions or something on his feet and it was uncomfortable. There's a lot of pictures of Albert Einstein wearing
Slippers.
sandals,
Oh,
slippers or
sandals.
sandals. Yeah,
Slippers.
with no
Yeah.
socks.
Yes.
Um, in general, even you can see that here in the picture. In general, he wasn't like he was a very kind of disheveled guy. Didn't like to
Yeah.
get dressed up. Didn't like to wear a suit and tie.
Never.
Um, Yeah, 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 yeah.
He,
So what else do you
he,
remember from visiting with Albert Einstein?
okay. These are some other little things.
Yeah,
Okay. Not at the same time, but I also asked him. Now I was, 9.5, 10, and his his calves would show, and he didn't have any hair, but my father had hair on his legs. So
yeah,
I asked him why he didn't have hair on his legs. I mean, I'm just a little kid, and I had never seen a man, who didn't have hair on his legs at the beach and whatever, and he had none. Well, now that I'm old, I understand that. But so he told me, he said, "Well, I wear pants all the time. I wore pants my whole life, and they rub, and now my hair doesn't grow."
uh-huh.
And that's what he told me. And I have to disagree with him because as you get older, the hair doesn't grow too much, except from your ears and your nose and whatever. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
anyway, that's what he told me, and I remembered it. Um,
Hold on. I have a picture I'm gonna pull up here. Hold
okay,
on. Let me get back to our screen here. Just give me a second here. This is a picture I like to show when I give presentations about him. This is a picture of Einstein at the beach, wearing what looks like women's sandals.
yes, it does, doesn't it?
Right?
Absolutely. I guess maybe they didn't have men's sandals in those days. I don't know.
Maybe
I
it's
don't
just more
know. But
comfortable.
yes,
Yeah, who knows?
how
But you're right, it doesn't look like he has a lot of hair on his legs.
Huh.
Yeah,
Interesting. Never saw it before. Those are not the
yeah.
slippers he was wearing. Every time
Okay.
I saw him, he had, I think it was a maroon sweater, but
Mhm,
I'm not absolutely positive, but he wore the same kind of sweater. And he wore sort of like burgundy house slippers that were,
mhm,
um, I guess leather, but they were slip-ons, and that's what he
mhm,
wore. So
mhm.
I did read, I think in your book that sometimes he wore ladies' shoes or something or slippers.
Yeah, yeah,
And he didn't when I knew him. So he did have these burgundy, very typical slip-on slippers,
yeah,
that everybody had. My father probably had a pair too.
yeah.
Um, and his clothes were always, he just was not pretentious. Now his house. Do you like to hear about his house?
Yeah, please tell us about his house. I can find a picture while you're talking about it.
Okay, I'll never forget. It was on Mercer Street.
Yeah,
Um, it was. I thought it was a really big house. I mean, we lived in an apartment in Brooklyn, so I
right,
didn't have a lot of comparisons.
right.
But I thought it was pretty big. And I don't remember the living room at all. Um, but I do remember the dining room, and it was a really big wooden table in the dining room. I mean, like maybe 12 people could eat there or something. I mean, it was
Uh-huh,
huge.
uh-huh,
And there was a sideboard, and on the sideboard was a statue, a little statue of Mary. And, see, it's not as big as I thought it was.
no, it's a
When I
pretty
was a
small
kid,
house.
I
Yeah.
I thought it was a huge house. But yes, that's it. And,
So
yeah,
it's
it's
a
not that
statue of
big, is it?
Mary.
There's a small statue of Mary like this, And I asked
Uh-huh.
my mom, I said, "Isn't he Jewish?
Yeah.
Doesn't why does he have a statue of Mary?" And she said, and my mother, who's an artist, said, "Well, it's really a beautiful piece of wood. I mean, it was
Right.
done. It's really very beautiful. So he just likes, he liked that. I mean, but he's very Jewish, but he's, but he liked the statue. Even though I didn't know the word, he was definitely a minimalist,
Yes.
because there was basically hardly anything in the house. I mean, I didn't see the bedrooms. I didn't see, I didn't see a lot, but I saw the dining room, which was huge. I didn't eat in the dining room. I ate in the kitchen.
Right.
There were no
Very,
servants.
very informal. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very,
Very
yeah, no
informal.
servants, just me and either Margot, and I'm sure her name was Margot. Me and
Yeah.
Margot or Miss Dukas, the nice one.
Yeah.
I'm sure I ate with whoever the nice one was. I'm sorry, history doesn't know this, and I'm sorry I won't be able to lend any information of who the nice one was.
And and Einstein was a vegetarian at the time?
Yes, because
Like
in
health
those
issues, I think.
days,
Yeah.
yeah, those days everybody ate meat like all the time.
Mhm.
You had it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And
Right.
I'd eat lunch there. They bake me sandwiches, no meat. And I wasn't, I mean, it was good. I don't remember what it was. And it was
Yeah.
good. But my mom said, no, he doesn't eat meat. So, you just have to, don't complain,
Yeah.
just eat the food.
Yeah.
But and it was
The
good.
the interesting thing about this house, people always ask me if it's a museum or something right now. It's not.
No,
It's
it's not.
owned it's owned by the Institute for Advanced Study in, Princeton, and
Yeah.
they just rent it out to other professors. So, there's, like, other professors, it's a private house, other professors live
Yeah.
there, and, I'm told some other Nobel Prize winners over the years have lived in the house. The one thing they do that's public is, so there's a great story about Albert Einstein moved to America in October 1933,
Mm,
right before, like, a week or 2 before
yeah.
Halloween. And so
Ah,
Halloween comes, 1933, and people knock on his door. The kids knock on his door and they say, trick or treat. And, he's German. He's never heard of Halloween before. And so he opens the door and they say trick or treat. He doesn't know what they're there for. And Einstein, was famously, he played the violin. And so
yes.
he's like, oh, let me give a little concert on the porch for the kids. And he gave a concert on the porch for his violin for the kids. And so nowadays, to remember that event, every Halloween they hire a violin player to play on that porch.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
lovely. I knew nothing about that, but I could see where he would do that and be nice to the kids instead of saying, "Get off of my porch."
Right,
He would never
right.
do that, "Get out of
Yeah,
here." He would never say
yeah,
that. And he really loved us kids. I mean, it was really a pleasure. Okay, in the house, in the
yeah.
back of the house, there was an attic,
Okay.
and there was a big window. Can we see the picture again? You can't see it at all. Okay, so
Yeah.
the roof is like that, and it
Mhm.
was like the window was like this, like that. It was a big window, and in front of that big window, which overlooks the backyard, was a little desk. It wasn't even a desk. It was just a little table, but he used it as a desk, and there was a pad of paper there, and there was pens or pencils or something, and I used to, you know, draw on those. And when it was raining, I would spend a lot of time up there because he had toys up there.
Mm.
He had I don't think they're around anymore, but there he had little games where you had a ball bearing and you had to go through a maze and
Mhm.
get the ball bearing to the top down a
So like a
hole or something
puzzle,
like
a
that.
little puzzle
And
toy.
little puzzles, and he had quite a few of those.
Uh-huh.
And I used to really love doing that. Some was complicated, and he used to give us toys. Um, like he gave us a kaleidoscope. It was a beautiful
Okay.
kaleidoscope. I don't know what happened to it. My mother had it for decades, but it just disappeared.
Sure.
So we had this beautiful kaleidoscope. I had never seen one before, and the professor gave it to us. He gave us a president's game. I don't remember the game exactly, but it had statues of all the presidents. They might have been made out of wood because I don't know if they made a lot of plastic in 54. So I
Right.
don't know, but maybe they
Yeah.
were. And I don't remember if you moved them around or you had cards and you figured out what President Coolidge did. You know,
Right.
I don't know, but I remember that we played with it until it was destroyed. Oh, he gave us some Lincoln Logs, and
I
I
remember
loved
those.
the
Yeah.
Lincoln Logs. That was great, and they were made out of wood. I'm positive of that. And I don't know if they have that now, but Lincoln Logs. So, and
Yeah.
he gave us lots of different games, and he said, because I remember I asked him, I said, why do you have all these games? And he said, well, everybody gives me stuff,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know why, and I'm just, I want you to have it. And in your book, it said how people wanted him to endorse things.
Yes. Yeah.
So I didn't know this. I never knew this until I read it in your book. And then thought, aha, that was an aha moment because everybody's giving him all this stuff, all these
Right.
toys, so he can endorse them,
Yeah.
but he's giving them to us. And
Yeah.
that's why that's why I think I met some really interesting people whom I don't really remember too well. But I met lots of different people, and he always had people there when we were there. Always.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there were
Yeah.
movie makers, there were reporters, there were friends of friends, there were just lots of people, and sometimes there were kids to play with, but they were younger
Yeah.
than me, and there wasn't anybody my age. Uh,
He seemed to me, just from my research writing the book, like he seems to me to be, first of all, yes, he loved kids, and
yeah,
he loved just the company of other people. He was a very gregarious host and
yes,
things like that. Yeah.
yes, and I could tell that even when I was a little kid, um, and I think 9 and 10-year-olds are smarter today than they were in the early '50s.
Uh-huh.
And I think they're more aware of what's happening because of all their media and everything else. So,
Yeah.
the only things I could compare what was happening was I lived in Brooklyn on the fifth or sixth floor of an apartment
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the experience or anything to go into, deep conversations or anything. But let's see, I did take notes about about the garden. I'd like to talk about the garden.
Okay.
The garden, all right, to
This is in the
my
backyard.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the backyard to me was huge, but probably wasn't. Um, and it had two trellises. And
Mhm.
we would walk, yeah, it couldn't be. I see the other house. So it couldn't be that huge. So
Yeah.
it was just long and it had two trellises and there were lots and lots of flowers and grass and trees and bushes. And it just seemed like paradise to me. And I could just sit there for hours and I didn't care what the adults were talking about or whatever. I just loved it, absolutely loved it.
Mhm.
Um, and oh, the picture of me and my sisters. That's the backyard. That's the porch on the backyard. And I would say it now, but not then, that he held court there because he would be in that seat, the chair,
Yeah. Yeah.
and people would visit. And I mean, they're visiting, and I did meet lots of people, but I don't know who they
Yeah.
were, and I didn't
Right,
keep a diary.
you could have met famous people that you wouldn't have known.
No, I had no idea. So, but I did meet, I mean, lots of people, and I think, I met, I don't even know if I should say it. I think I met Edward R. Murrow,
Uh-huh.
but
The
I
newscaster.
the news, he was very famous,
Yeah.
and I think that I met him, but I tried to look that up and I couldn't find anything with Einstein and Edward R.
Right.
Murrow, but you know,
It's very possible. So if anyone's just joining us, we're talking to Alicia Sacks. She is the tall girl in this picture with Einstein. It's her with her two sisters, and they were good family friends. Her parents were good family friends, and they would visit Professor Einstein a couple times a month at his home in Princeton. Now, one person who was not in this photo is your younger
oh,
brother. So your
yes,
younger brother was not born until you said, I think, June 1955.
yes,
And
2 months after
yeah,
he
so
passed
Albert
away.
Einstein died in April 18th, 1955. And your mom was pregnant with your brother, but they didn't have the son yet. And so when your brother is born, June 1955, a couple months after Einstein dies, What is the name your parents give your little brother? Oh, I think we might have frozen here. It looks like Alicia froze for a second. Hopefully she'll come back in. But the answer to that question is they named their brother, the son, Albert. So Alicia's younger brother is named Albert after Albert Einstein.
Oh, here we
Um,
go.
Here
Okay.
we go. You're
So
back. You're
yeah,
back.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was
So
just saying that
oh,
your
yeah.
parents named your brother Albert uh,
Yes, they did.
after
Yes.
Albert Einstein.
And yes, and Albert had a dog, and quite a while ago, I think before he got married, and the dog's name was Einstein.
I have another picture here since we're talking about your siblings. I met your other sister who's in that picture, Susan. And here's a
The
picture
baby.
of, yeah, the baby from that photo. Here she is in May. I saw her in Jerusalem. That's your younger sister, Susan, who also is
Yes.
in that picture with Einstein. All right. Alicia, is there anything else you want to share with us about your friendship with amazingly that you were alive at the same time as Einstein. Uh, anything else you want to share with us?
Well, before I found out about your book, I was thinking that I might be the only person left in the world who we absolutely remembers Einstein. There might be people who met him or
Right,
hung out with him even, but maybe they're really old because if they were adults, maybe they don't really remember.
right.
Um, and I was thinking, wow, I'm still lucid. I and this is, and I thought about this a couple of months before I saw your book. I found
Hmm.
out about your book, and I thought, wow, it'd be great if I could, like, talk to somebody about this because once I'm gone,
Yeah,
I don't know if there's anybody left.
yeah. You're at that age. You said you were like 9 years old in this picture, where you probably remember a lot
Yeah.
about Einstein. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to record this, and now we'll have a video of it
Uh,
in
Good.
perpetuity.
And
Yeah.
I just wanna say that often I think of the professor because he was like a grandfather to me, and
Hmm.
we didn't have conversations per se, but, I mean, he would talk about, how my day is going, what I like to do, things like that, but he he really seemed concerned about me, and he let me ask him all kinds of questions, and the ones I asked you about the socks and those just a few questions I can't remember,
Right.
most of the stuff, but those were just so weird that I remembered them because I thought, "Oh, I know about Einstein's socks and his hairy legs or non-hairy legs."
Yeah.
So, I just have very fond memories of him, and, he was like a grandfather to me. So,
Yeah. Well,
I
is this such?
appreciate this.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I'm sure all of the Einstein's fans. Einstein is the most beloved dead
Yeah.
celebrity on social media. He's got more fans than any other dead celebrity. He's got more than 20 million fans. And so to be able, I mean, it's more than most living celebrities. And so to be able to talk to someone like you who is, standing right next to him and talking to him is such a treat. So, Alicia, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to share this with everyone. And everybody be safe and happy and laugh a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you.